Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinetsky. Today we are joined by Mr. Stephen Hines, the founder of Victory Labs and Titan Arena from down under in Australia. Welcome, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you, Robert. It is fantastic to be on your show. I've actually become quite addicted to listening to you and Snoop. And now I literally, a week can't go by where I just want to hear the two of you talk about the latest Bang flavor. And I'll have to have him on next time because when he gets started, I'm like, oh, we know what's coming. So, yeah, sensational show. And I think, a lot of people, in Australia and New Zealand are going to really, catch on and enjoy listening to it also.
Awesome. Well, I very much appreciate the support, and I'll make sure to pass your compliments on to Justin as well. Well, I think I'll just have to pick a new Bang flavor or something I haven't tried yet at the store, and then we'll just kick off each episode. Because Bang releases flavors so frequently that I could probably pick one for like every other week for the rest of the year, and we'd never run out of something to go through.
Yeah, so a special request is that sometime in the future I want to be on the show with Snoop, and when you crack open the latest Bang flavor. So that would be my dream at some point.
You got it. We will make that happen. I can assure you of that.
And sorry, just one more thing I was going to say before you get started asking questions is what is sensational about your podcast is, when I came across it, I was like, this is like the conversations people have on the inside in the supplement industry, that you don't normally hear. And that's what's sort of so engaging about your show. I mean, it's similar, a lot of the times you guys get started and I'm like, wow, no one's ever said this publicly before, but, if you went to any of the international expos, Olympias or Arnold's, it sounds like a lot of the inner conversations that take place. So I think that's why, it was so fascinating for me to listen to you guys get stuck into it.
Yeah, that was really a key goal of mine when I started the podcast, was to kind of peel back the curtain, so to speak, on the supplement industry from the consumer's point of view, because all they get blasted with is constant advertisements, marketing lingo, email blasts for, buy our new product, here's a new sale, this, that, and the other. But nobody understands what the hell actually goes on when you're formulating a supplement, some of the restrictions that brand owners are under to bring a product to market. Where does the manufacturing side come in? How does marketing playing into bringing a product to a market and ensuring the success of that as much as you can, assure a product's going to be a hit or a flop or something. So I wanted to try and give listeners an insight in an easy to understand manner, and then we also get into a lot of the supplement science stuff from time to time. And I know we're trying to hit a bunch of different things, but it's, to try and unveil the supplement industry as much as possible so people can get a better understanding of what in the world they're spending their money on and what they're putting into their bodies.
Yeah, and we're finding consumers now are more educated than they've ever been. And people want to know, what's in the products and how it works. And, gone are the days of, the dream days of the industry for some companies were when you could sell 5 grams of creatine monohydrate with 60 grams of sugar and sell it for over $100. So those days have long gone.
Yeah, the good old muscle tech, cell tech days are long gone, and the outrageous marketing claims that went with it.
Yeah, and the outrageous margins of selling creatine monohydrate with sugar.
Yeah.
So that's changed. Yeah.
So let's get your backstory. How did you get into the supplement industry, and then what led you to found Victory and Titan?
So it's a bit of backstory of mine. So I'm glad, Snoop's not on the show for the first part. So my original background, I've always been into like health and fitness, and one thing I've got to say is I'm also just as much into the natural health and the biohacking side as my other passion, which is sports nutrition and sports supplementation. Mm-hmm. So in a past life, I introduced GNC at the time to Australia. That was getting close to about 20 years ago. So if Snoop was on, you can point out that was quite some time ago, and haven't been involved with that for over a decade. Then I was involved in distribution of international brands into Australia for quite some period after that. Mm-hmm. And now is like the final evolution, or we don't know what that is, where I've had the chance to really create our own brands. Mm-hmm. And be the actual, brand developer. So, we have several brands that fall under our umbrella of Armada Nutrition. But, the main two I think people would know are Victory Labs and Titan Arena. So Victory Labs, just a bit of background. Victory Labs was actually started from scratch as like an entirely new brand. Titan Arena, you may have like a lot of US listeners who are familiar with the original Titan brand of protein bars that was originally created by Premier Nutrition. We actually purchased the Titan brand. It had actually been sold from the original owners onto Post Holdings, a large US company, and we actually purchased the Titan brand from them. Gotcha. And then we've expanded it into Titan Arena with a full line of, pre-workouts, fat burners, proteins, including the new Thick Shake series, which I think you are going to try or have tried.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a bit of a background on me.
Fantastic. With owning the two separate brands, are y'all marketing these to two different demographics? Do you run into any challenges, or do you see them supporting each other, or are they just two completely divergent topics, and one is for one company, one's for the other, and we market them separately? We don't do much cross promotion at all.
So yeah, it's like a great question, and there's a lot of method behind the madness of what we've done. So what happens a lot of the time in this industry is people have a brand, it's like a single brand, and they will turn around and say our product is like the best product there is. And my question is, best product for who? It's like, for example, and I'll go back a step. I do like a lot of seminars over here, and the first question I ask people is, what is the perfect diet? Is it paleo? Is it keto? Is it vegan? Is it high protein, low carb? Is it like low protein, high carb? And people are pretty smart these days, so I actually don't have anyone yelling out, vegan or keto or something like that. Most people actually know the answer before I get to it, and that is, they say, well, it really depends on the person. And that's like 100% correct. Yeah. And it's not just simple as saying everyone should do this one particular diet. One of the things I'm sort of really finding is, as a bit of a generalization, is that people whose ancestry was brought up closer to the equator tend to do like a lot better on carbs than a lot of other people do. People whose ancestry was brought up, getting closer to the North or South Pole, just absolutely kill it on a keto diet, and do much better on fats. Everyone else in the middle, that's where it gets really complicated, because it's like a whole bag.
Yeah. Is the keto craze sweeping over Australia and New Zealand markets like it is here in the States?
Of the US, but it is growing. So one of the things that, just to give you a bit of an idea, is the Australian market is probably more like the US than any other country in the world, but it has its own sort of like tweaks and individualities. And but a lot of the time, if you see like a trend, hitting the US market, you'll often find it, the similar, pathways are taking place over here in both Australia and New Zealand.
What?
And so to get back to your question, go on.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Get back to your question. Yeah, so to get back to your question, for that same reason, I would never turn around and say this is the best pre-workout in the world, or the best protein in the world. The question is the best protein for who, and that's why instead of having like one brand, we have several brands, so that for example, in the Victory Labs brand is more of a higher performance technology brand, and our pre-workout or fat burner is going to be like a lot more advanced. So someone who's like trained for years and used supplements for years, it might be perfectly suited for them. Whereas the Titan brand, our pre-workout is mid-strength. It's not the level of strength like a lot of the pre-workouts that you talk about on the show, but there's like a huge market of people who don't want 400 milligrams of caffeine, don't want to blow their head off before they go to the gym,
right?
Or and it suits them perfectly. So that's the reason why we have different brands and different options.
Okay, perfect. When it comes to flavoring products, do you find there's a big discrepancy between how sweet people in the States like it versus people in Australia and New Zealand? Is there a big difference there, or is pretty much everybody likes super sweet flavors like we like them here?
It's funny you ask that question. 10 years ago, I would say that in Australia and New Zealand, the level of sweetness people liked was nowhere near as strong as the US. But we seem to have caught up. That has changed. So now I would say it's on par with the same level of sweetness in the US, but that sort of, happened over the last decade.
Mm-hmm. What have you seen as some of the emerging trends over 2019 in the Australian supplement market?
Look, the biggest one out of all trends, and it's probably like the biggest trend change I've seen in like quite some time in this industry, has been the shift from BCAAs to EAAs. And, I know it's something that you guys like talked about on your show, but that's been dramatic. And I get out on the road and I travel everywhere, and I ask, people, retailers, what's the breakdown of taking place? I mean, 12 months ago, it would have been like 99% branch chains, literally. Now it's, it changes everywhere, but I would say it's 75% essential amino acids people are using over like branch chains. So that has really hit here.
Do you have a personal preference which one you prefer to use?
So, yeah, I actually do. I think definitely essential amino acids most people should be using over branch chains. So I'll give a bit of a rundown of the way that I look at this. So about a decade ago, there was some great research done on the 2:1:1 ratio of branch chain amino acids, done in, the US universities, double-blind placebo clinical trials.
Yeah.
And these trials were based on two different groups over an 8-week period, both training and taking the BCAAs in a 2:1:1 ratio while they were training. And the results were incredible. They actually showed that people using the branch chains increased both their muscle tissue and decreased body fat quite significantly over the control group who weren't taking the branch chains. So for the last decade, branch chains have just been a huge category. It's just been absolutely incredible. And no one, though, for the people, though, and I think it's probably similar in the US, but here in Australia, particularly where it gets hot, people were drinking them like cordial all day long.
Yep.
So people would have up to 6 times a day. And nobody up until recently, including myself, thought to ask the question, well, the research is based on taking BCAAs during training. Has anyone done any research on what happens outside of training? And so I don't know who the first person was to ask that question, but I would applaud them for doing that. And as a follow-up, there's been some really incredible research done in universities, clinical trials. And although branch chains are beneficial during training, the research has shown that taken outside of training, they're actually detrimental. And that when people are taking them, 4 or 5 times per day, they're actually creating like an amino imbalance. And it's actually doing more harm than good. And, it's just, interesting because, you would normally think more is better of like most things. And so the more research has been done and showed that taking essential amino acids outside of training is great because you're actually getting all the 9 essential amino acids you would in a protein and getting all of the benefits of those broken down. Mm-hmm. So that's the first part. So that's why, first of all, if you're going to drink either of them outside of training, I would only drink essential amino acids. Then the second big piece of research that came out, and I think one of the reasons why this has hit so quickly is now in like 2019, you can be on your mobile phone on like, the subway or the bus and you can be reading like white papers that were previously hidden in, secret journals of scientists. And the second big piece of research was that during training, EAAs were actually far more effective than BCAAs, in all the key markers of muscle protein synthesis and recovery and, all the different aspects that you want to get. So that was part number 2. Mm-hmm. So, but the other thing I'll then sort of like, caution people about is the EAA category has become the wild, wild west. So all of a sudden now that, this research has come out and the consumer's looking for EAAs, all of a sudden they're popping up everywhere. But, one thing I would caution anyone to do is to look at the label. And the one key thing I really look for in an EAA is that it has like 2.5 grams of leucine. That is the one amino acid that's going to activate the mTOR pathway. involve like rapamycin and is critical for muscle synthesis, there is a lot of EAAs on the market that are underdosed in leucine, and you're just going to get zero results from taking that. So that's the one thing I would like to point out to everyone, no matter what brand they're taking, is to look for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially the amino products that I find that are notoriously underdosed are the energy amino blends. By and large, you're getting a 5-gram blend, and it'll say essential amino acids or amino acid blend, and it's a 5-gram blend, but the first ingredient in it's usually like taurine, and then it might have some arginine in it and a bunch of other crap, and then interspersed in there are 7, 8, or 9 of the essential amino acids. So you really have no idea what you're getting of however much, and it's in a prop blend. And I blame Optimum a lot for doing that, because they started the whole amino energy craze, and then everybody else kind of jumped on the bandwagon with doing that. So yeah, I would start there if you can. Are prop blends still pretty much are they starting to get completely phased out in Australia, or were they have to be? Yeah. Everything's got to be open label down there, doesn't it?
It's changing a fair bit, but it's more driven by what the consumer is looking for. Mm-hmm. So the consumer is now looking for open label formulas, and it was actually funny because I was actually challenged on this yesterday with the new Xenobar Cryo that's come out, and I was saying, look, the Xenobar Cryo will be the only formula we launched that's a proprietary blend. Everything is going to be open label. Because that's what people are looking for, and to like a large extent, I think it's pretty important so that people realize what they're getting. The only thing, on the other hand, and I've heard both you and Snoop talk about this, is it can be great, but it can also be a bit of a curse at the same time, mm-hmm. because there's very few people who actually understand that some ingredients work synergistically, some work antagonistically. So you could just take 10 ingredients and put them in a formula of clinical dosages based on science at the time, and it's not necessarily going to create a great formula. So, Xenobar is one that, has just been an incredible formula that actually works for fat burning, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But, it's something that people have tried to copy for that reason, whereas in the Victory Labs brand, the new Doom that's going to come out will be completely open label, mm-hmm. and all the recent refreshes in the Titan Arena range have been open label too for that same reason.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the Xenobar Cryo, because the news just came across Stack 3D, I believe yesterday, that you can stick the tub in the refrigerator and yes. the label changes. So I guess let's discuss why. First of all, we're always asking for innovation or novelty in the industry, and this is a new change. Another brand said they were going to do scratch and sniff labels a couple of weeks ago, and that met with some mixed feedback from people that follow the industry newswire. How do you think this will be received by the public? What led y'all to do that, and then do you see it going off well?
Sure. So there's a few great parts to that. First of all, the latest version of Xenobar in the Cryo series, I wanted to increase the amount of L-Carnitine in the formula. And so with the Xenobar, thermogenic fat burner, it's always been heavily focused on L-Carnitine, and it contains both high amounts of L-Carnitine tartrate and fumarate, which we can come back to and do a bit of a deeper dive into how they work. But one of the challenges that we have over here in this market, and I definitely would be varied for different parts of the US, mm-hmm. is parts of this country are very humid, and L-Carnitine is an incredibly hygroscopic ingredient. Mm-hmm. So you would find that in a lot of the blends that you have, even in the US, because they're made for like the whole of the US or the whole world, they're actually underdosed in L-Carnitine, and that's purely because if the manufacturer or the brand added more L-Carnitine, they would just have return issues and clumping issues. So right. You wouldn't find very many that have, the scientific amount that you need to actually activate the mitochondria to draw on fat stores for energy. So the challenge was, how do we overcome that? And one of the things that, I've done for some years is put on the labels of, most of the pre-workouts and fat burners that we do store in the fridge. Mm. But, nobody reads the label. It's even like small print. So, that would work for all pre-workouts and fat burners, not just our own, is to store them in the fridge. So that might be like a tip your listeners out there if they're having clumping issues. So that was like the challenge. How do we overcome that? So then it's a bit of a funny story. I love biohacking, and one of my new addictions is cryotherapy. And I'm really lucky that across the road from where I live, I'll give these guys a shout out, there's a place called Alchemy, and amongst other things, they have the full whole body cryotherapy chamber. It comes from Germany. It costs, I think, about $350,000. But you are
holy
you're
cow.
in there for 3 minutes. You're in there for 3 minutes, and it's for the US listeners, it's at like I think minus 200 to 220 Fahrenheit, and you're in there for 3 minutes. Now, what normally happens with this is I love it because I have one of these brains that just like can't switch off. So when you're in this chamber, you're not thinking about all the problems that you have in life. You're not thinking about all the accounts that you have to chase up or things that you have to do. So you normally get 3 minutes of what I call Zen-like meditation. Your mind is as clear as I think a Zen Buddhist monk who's been meditating in a secret location for 30 decades undisturbed. So my mind is normally blank. But one day I was actually in the chamber, and all of a sudden in the cryo chamber, this idea snapped into my head. If it's possible, let's create a label that changes color when it's chilled at the right temperature so that people want to store it in the fridge. And it was really funny because I actually jumped out of a cryotherapy chamber and I said to one of the owners there, Jules, I said, remember this moment. I said, if it can be done, I think I've come up with an idea. So that's where it came from, was the Zenovar cryo series. I was actually in the cryo chamber where the idea came from. And it's great because I think it's both functional, in that it's allowed us to put more L-Carnitine and make a superior product. And also at the same time, we've already seen, and it's only been a recent launch, consumers are loving it because, it's something different and innovative and, and also fun at the same time. But it's very scientifically functional. And the response has been huge. I mean, it literally, just launched in, the Australian and New Zealand markets. And, the first, run, sold out on arrival, and we're having to, get a whole bunch of air freights, rush to catch up. And we also have had a lot of international interest, and, we will be launching this in the US and, other markets coming up. So that'll happen. But the response has been great.
Excellent. All right, so let's stick on Zenovar. I've got a few manufacturing side questions for you for just the Australian market in general, but let's stay on point with the Zenovar first. So can you give us some insight without giving away, I guess, the whole thing about what's differences in the formula between the current edition and previous editions of it, and then why go in so heavily on L-Carnitine and use the tartrate and the fumarate versions?
Yeah, so first of all, L-Carnitine, and we're just speaking about it, a lot of people know of L-Carnitine, and first of all, a lot of people, I don't know about in the US, but in Australia, acetyl L-Carnitine is incredibly popular. It's a fantastic supplement, but it actually has more scientific research done on it for, the mental cognition and preventing age-related memory impairment.
Right.
And so I'm a huge fan of acetyl L-Carnitine, but for a fat burner or a thermogenic or weight loss formula, the most effective form is, I think the combination of tartrate and fumarate. Tartrate is the quickest acting. So instead of just having a single carnitine, we've got the tartrate, which is quicker acting into your system, and the fumarate, which acts a little bit more slowly. So I think people are going to get, better results from having the combination of the two. And then, the actual amount of L-Carnitine is incredibly important to actually, trigger the mitochondria to release fat stores, so that you're getting the double benefit of, utilizing and releasing fat, which is what people want to do, and also having more energy when they train at the same time. So the challenge was, and the reason that most products don't have enough carnitine in them is just purely because it clumps when mixed with other ingredients. So the one big change with Zenovar was to add that into it. What has stayed consistent with Zenovar is one of the unique things that we have in both Victory Labs, Zenavar, and Doom is fulvic acid. And gosh, you could actually have a whole podcast just on like fulvic acid and have someone talking about that, and that would go for for at least an hour. Yeah. There's a lot of So and on the use of fulvic acid, there's a lot of probably talk in the sports nutrition industry on the benefits of fulvic acid in the various forms. However, and that definitely works in Zenavar, but the reason we have it in both Zenavar and Doom is if you have it in like a precise amount, it actually helps utilize all of the other nutrients being taken in by the body, because it literally is like the smallest molecule. So and plays like a huge role, in the various nutrient absorption. So the Zenavar and Doom, for a few years have, had that, which has been quite unique to them, and that's why people experience something that they haven't had that sensation before, and it's been quite unique to those two formulas.
Excellent. One thing I would say about the carnitine stuff, it seems tartrate will find it in some fat burners. Mostly we'll find it in recovery formula, since there's a few of those studies that show it helps reduce muscle soreness and muscle damage from eccentric exercise. We get a lot, and by I mean a lot, it seems like every brand here launches some kind of liquid L-Carnitine supplement, and it's just the regular plain L-Carnitine that's in liquid form. Is there a lot of that down there?
Yeah, we also have the same thing down here. There's been, they sort of like come and go. There's sort of like waves where all of a sudden there's like a million liquid L-Carnitines, and then they'll disappear and then they'll come back on the market again.
Yeah, I'm curious why that's been such, because the research on regular L-Carnitine isn't overwhelmingly positive, I would find, or isn't overly beneficial for your average person, because the average person, unless you're really old, a vegan or a vegetarian, you're not going to be deficient in regular L-Carnitine. Where I'm inclined to believe or put a little bit more weight on the enhanced forms of carnitine, like tartrate or acetyl L-Carnitine, because those are in healthier populations or in people that aren't decrepit or lacking in essential vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, I don't think you could be more correct in what you just said. And that's what all of the current science supports, and that's why the Victory Labs range is our premium performance range. So with the Victory Labs products, what we aim to do is we actually aim to like maximize the performance from all of them. So, if we felt that, we couldn't produce the product to, what I would call, my idea of perfection, because we just wouldn't produce it at all. Gotcha. So that's why you get to work to get around that challenge.
Perfect. Well, along those lines, let's get a little bit more into your design philosophy when you're designing a formula. So let's say with for the pre-workout Doom, what is your philosophy when you're going in to design a pre-workout?
Yeah, so my philosophy is probably a little bit different to what's currently on the market. So what has happened is the market has transitioned a little bit into what people are looking for. I mean, the original pre-workouts to today are two very different things. So a lot of pre-workouts on the market have purely been based on the stims inside of them. And, and that's easy. I mean, anyone can just like add more caffeine and have more caffeine than anyone else in their like pre-workout. Yeah. That doesn't really take a lot of innovation. However, and I'm not saying, that our pre-workouts don't have stims in them. People are still looking for that effect. But, one of the things that I sort of, look at when creating a pre-workout, and I ask people this question, is a pre-workout. Like, it's actually, I think people have forgotten that it's actually pre-workout. Like, it's designed to enhance your workout. So what do you want from a workout? Yeah. It's not every single day. Most people don't train 7 times a week or twice a day, 7 times a week with a pre-workout. Most people train 4 hours or 4 times a week, 4 to 5 times a week for an hour. And so basically, first of all, you're designing a formula to be taken for that like 1 hour. And during that 1 hour, people are looking to increase their performance. So increase their intensity in the gym, increase their recovery time between training sets. And ultimately, people are looking in most part to increase their like strength, muscular size, and decrease body fat. That's what people are looking for. So when designing a formula, I have all of that in mind. So to break it down, I really look quite closely, at the three ATP energy cycles. And, I think a lot of people know about this, but, it seems to have been forgotten in the supplement industry because it's like a race to the heaviest stim. But ultimately, I'm trying to create like a pre-workout that is going to give people maximum performance. So first of all, I look at, the first cycle, which is, ATP, the phosphagen cycle. So all three cycles produce ATP, but the first one lasts for about 7 to 10 seconds. And, that's why people, when you're in the gym, those first three reps, are people's like most effective.
Right.
So first of all, looking at ingredients that are going to, maximize, the performance in that first energy cycle and then their recovery for when they do like, their next set again. So we kind of like, look at, and that's why, everything's being upgraded to creatine HCl because I think that really gets into people's, system a lot more quickly than other forms of creatine. They all have the end result once you're saturated, but for a pre-workout, I find that's incredibly effective. Then I look really closely at the second cycle, which is the anaerobic cycle, and that lasts from about like 10 to 90 seconds. And there's other ingredients in the formulas that, work on these two cycles, but probably like the most well-known is beta-alanine. And, and that cycle, a lot of people refer to as like the lactic cycle or, the glycolysis cycle. And what's actually happening is, when people are training, it's their lactic acid levels increase. And that's the biggest factor that sort of like cuts out that energy source during that second cycle. So, beta-alanine is one of the ingredients that causes that. And just as a side note, if you're interested, one of the things I get asked a lot from people is about the tingles from beta-alanine and what causes that. And the actual term for it is paresthesia, is the scientific term for that. And all that really means is unknown sensation. It's the basic meaning of it. And people, a lot of people think that is like, blood flow being increased. It's actually beta-alanine attaching to the nerve endings and causing like a tingling sensation in people. And now I have a theory on why that's so popular. Now I have to state for the record, this is not based on science. This is just my own personal theory. Yeah. But every time I do a seminar, there's at least one or two people in the room who already made this connection. So I have got a question for you to ask you. What is the most common cause of paresthesia in human beings? Do you know what causes that the most?
The most common cause of it? I mean, we're talking about in a supplement setting or just in a day-to-day life?
In a day-to-day life.
I don't know. I guess no, because I was thinking you lose circulation if you're falling asleep at night and your arm loses circulation, your hand wakes up tingly, but that's a loss of blood flow. I don't know. You get those cold shivers up your spine every now and then, and I have no idea what causes that if you get those temporary things.
Okay, so this is actually a little bit crazy, but this part is actually factual. The number one cause of humans experiencing paresthesia is actually having an orgasm during having sex, and that is an absolute fact. That's when it occurs the most. So my side theory is that people are, without realizing it subconsciously, are making that association with that taking place. And that's why people enjoy it so much. So when I mention that, everyone laughs, but there's always one or two people who go, yeah, I realize that. So
I'm sure there's a connection to Freud in there somewhere about that beta-alanine and orgasms and sex and all that. There's got to be some overlap there. Something deeply rooted in the subconscious.
Certainly the deepest subconscious. And then, so but getting back to it, then, the third cycle is the aerobic cycle, and, that's the least efficient form of energy. So we want to try and make sure that, people are staying in, the ATP cycle and then like, second anaerobic cycle, for the majority of our workout. So it's more effective. Then, to break it down, one of the things that, I guess is a big part of formulas is like the pump effect. And I know you guys have been, like I said, I've been addicted to your podcast, have been like talking about the separate pump formulas, that are becoming quite popular. So what I try to do is try to include that in the one formula for people. And a lot of people love pumps because of the aesthetic effect. Everyone loves going to the gym and, checking themselves out in the mirror and, taking like 20 selfies in the bathroom after they've finished at the gym change room. I've seen that. I'm sure we all have. But the real, the science is what's actually happening is it's like increased blood flow to the muscle cells when you need it. And, you're getting more oxygen to the muscle cells, you're getting the nutrients from your pre-workout, and you're going to get better results during your training. And, going back on that, I was actually, the first brand I ever distributed back in the day was MRI. I don't know if you remember Ed Bird's black powder.
No, that was before probably my time in getting started in the industry.
A bit of sports supplement history for you. So he's one of the big names. He actually, was actually involved in the start of EAS at the time with Bill Phillips, and is renowned for being, I think the creator of HMB at the time and the science behind it. So he came out with the MRI brand after that, and he launched NO2 Black and Black Powder, and he was the first to really get the high dosages of the AAKG, the arginine alpha ketoglutarate, into the formulas for people to get these great muscle pumps.
Yeah.
The only problem was, and this was before your time, on your stomach, it was an absolute nightmare. So people spent a lot of time in the bathroom. Amazing pumps, but and the reason for that, and to explain what's happened now is, L-citrulline. Citrulline has replaced arginine in most formulas.
Yeah.
And what it confuses people, because in the body, it's actually the amino acid arginine that is responsible for creating those pumps.
Right.
So people will say, well, why have citrulline instead of arginine in the formulas? Well, this is, a lot of people don't realize that L-citrulline, when you take it in orally, compared to arginine taken in orally, it converts in your body to more arginine than taking arginine itself, because of its bioavailability and how your body works. So the citrulline is going to be far more effective these days for getting that muscle pump effect than arginine alone. It's actually going to create more arginine by a significant amount than actually taking arginine itself.
Correct. Yeah, the bioavailability of arginine, I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20%, if I remember my numbers correctly. And if you take in order to get any kind of beneficial effect from arginine, you have to take 10 to 20 grams, and by that point, like you mentioned earlier, you're going to be in the bathroom, for 45 minutes before you actually get to your workout, and by that point, the caffeine's going to be wearing off and everything else. So
that's right. That is completely right.
Along those lines, so for Doom, y'all chose to include agmatine sulfate, I would say, as the primary pump driver in there instead of citrulline. Was there any reason for that, or any reason that y'all are coming out with a non-stim to put in citrulline?
No. So that's actually changing. So there's going to be a Doom coming out in the Cryo series to follow up the Xenobar, and the new refreshed version of Doom that people are anxiously waiting for you'll see citrulline in there. You won't see agmatine in there. The only thing I will point out, and I don't want to give away too much about the formula before it's launched, is, however, it won't contain as much citrulline as you see in a lot of pre-workouts. So a lot of pre-workouts have jumped on citrulline and have 6 grams in there because it looks great. And at the top of a label, it has 6,000 milligrams of L-citrulline.
Yeah.
That actually is, in my opinion, based on all the science and research that I've seen, and also just experientially taking it, it's actually going to create a less effective pre-workout, a less desirable effect, than taking a bit of a reduced dosage of that. So in the new Zoom coming out, you will see less citrulline than, what's standardly on the market, but I think people are going to get a bit of a surprise that they're actually going to get, a greater muscle pump than they're currently getting from something that may have up to 6,000 milligrams of it.
Yeah. Well, what I find funny is that, even as little as probably 2 or 3 years ago, if a product either had 6 grams of citrulline malate or just 3 grams of L-citrulline, everybody was happy with that, because you're ending up with 3 grams of citrulline, and we've got enough data to show that 3 to 4 grams is more than enough to, enhance arginine levels in the body, boost nitric oxide, and enhance endurance performance and all of that stuff. But nowadays, it seems like there's an arms race between caffeine and citrulline and pre-workouts. Everybody's just upping the dose. And I saw one product had something like 10 grams of L-citrulline, which is the highest dose that's supported by research. Above that dose, your body just excretes it or converts it or metabolizes it out in some form or other. So it's weird that, people are poo-pooing the idea of that 3 to 4 grams of L-citrulline isn't beneficial anymore, which that's just not the case. There is benefit at 3 grams, there is benefit at 6 grams. We have some data a little bit saying that above 10 grams isn't good, or it's not going to confer any additional benefits. So there's no point in supplementing with that above and beyond. There seems like there needs to be a re-education just in mass that, anywhere between, 3 and 6 grams of L-citrulline is perfectly fine. Where you choose to do it, if you want to do it to save a little bit on shipping weight of a product, or you're packaging it with some other synergist nitric oxide ingredients, something like Vasodrive or Agmatine or Norvaline or any of those things, that's fine. I completely understand that. But the concept that a product is underdosed if it has 3 grams of citrulline, that's just not true.
And, that also brings back to the point I make, and this really upsets like a lot of people, but, I'll always, say what I think. Mm-hmm. And that is like, the open labels are as bad for the industry as they are good. If there were no open label formulas, you would never in a million years see 10 grams of citrulline. Mm-hmm. Because if you were purely making a formula and the only goal that you had was to make the best formula you possibly could, as opposed to what is perceived to be the best formula, there's no brand that would put 10 grams of citrulline in their pre-workout, because I don't know which one you're talking about, so I'm not, pointing anyone out, but I doubt there's anyone in the supplement industry who actually believes that 10 grams is better than, a lesser amount. So that's, one of the problems that you have from like open label, where you have people making formulas for what they think people want, as opposed to what's going to give the best result.
Right. And now, I guess you could make an argument. Everything is dosed based on body weight. So, 250 milligrams of caffeine is going to probably hit a 300-pound guy a lot different than it's going to hit, a 98-pound female. So much the same way, a bigger individual will probably stand to benefit from a higher dose of citrulline, but your average person hitting the gym isn't a 250-pound professional bodybuilder. They're going to be, probably 100, 125-pound female, or like 170 to 200-pound guy. And so they'll, anywhere in that 3 to 6 range, I think would cover everybody's bases more or less.
So I actually got a question for you. Do you know, and basically if you walk into a supplement store, mm-hmm. for literally every product on the shelf, who that serving recommendation is aimed at?
I would say it's probably aimed at 150-pound person, if I had to guess.
It's actually based on an 80-kilogram male who's training, which is about 200 pounds. So one thing, and you've made like a really great point. So I always explain to people, you have to bear that in mind. So if you're a 100-pound female, you really need half that dosage. Whereas if you're like a guy who's like 120 kilos and been training for years, and you're going to need like a higher amount. So literally every serving recommendation you'll see is based on that 200-pound male is what it's aimed at. So you're 100% correct in what you just said. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, let's get into. We touched on flavoring a little bit earlier. Well, let's go back to. Let's recircle back to that now and discuss the science of flavoring technology.
Yeah. So this is one that I'll give you a little bit of an insight into like flavoring technology, and a lot of people don't understand what's behind it. So in this industry, the challenge that you have is that you are taking products that actually taste absolutely terrible if they were on their own without flavoring. Correct. And you're trying to make them taste great. So one of the things that I do, and I guess a lot of people who like tried our products, and maybe we'll talk about the Titan Thick Shake series next and get your thoughts on it, is I spend like a lot of time in flavoring. So what I'll do is when I'm developing a new product with a manufacturer, I'll spend up to like 1 or 2 days just working on the flavor. And with some of the larger manufacturing companies, you'll find that they actually have a whole laboratory just dedicated for flavoring. And if you were to go in there, you would find that there's normally about up to 4 to 6 scientists in there. For some reason, they're normally female. And this is, to stereotype, but this is, really the case. You'll normally find, a bunch of women who graduated with PhDs in science, and then they've gone on straight after they've been finished college. And, they then get picked up by Hershey or Nestle as, as like, sort of like the best, in their graduating class,
right? And
they get to work flavoring. Now, if you're at Hershey's or Nestle, it's like an absolute dream because, you can just like add sugar to anything and it's going to taste really good.
Yeah.
So sports nutrition manufacturers then, recruit, scientists who've worked there for several years to come across, work in their flavor laboratories. And literally, I've, taken some videos to people. We'll use, like some, advanced sort of mixing equipment for small dosages. And it's literally adjusting by up to like 1 microgram up or down of like some of the ingredients can just tweak the flavor. So, it's very time consuming. But if you actually want to get, basically, I want to, create something that I personally love to drink. If it can't get to the point where I would personally love to drink it, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But it takes a fair bit of time.
So can you give the listeners a little inside glimpse into how the flavoring, when you decide on a flavor, is done? And by that I mean, when you walk back there and you meet with the flavor chemists and the food chemists, do they have like a jar that says strawberry flavor and then pineapple flavor and grape flavor and cranberry and bitterness blocker, and then they've got a bulk batch of Ace K, and then they take, a little half scoop of this, little dose scoop of that, they blend it up real quick, and then you try a taste of that? Or do you try, the flavors on their own first, just mixed with water, and then do you add in a sample of your products in that to make sure the flavors are strong enough to cover up the actives that are in the product? Or how does the whole process work, more or less, I guess, in your experience?
Right. Okay. So there's a couple of things, aspect to it. First of all, your description is correct. It's like a full scale laboratory, and literally, in there there's like hundreds of containers of every possible ingredient and excipient that you can imagine. So that, and also measuring equipment so that they can be added or subtracted up to like the microgram level. So you will see that. So what actually happens is, and I probably shouldn't give away all my secrets, but one of the things that I'll do is, the first thing, if you're speaking to a scientist, how do you explain flavor? Like, how do you explain a flavor? How do you explain the perfect chocolate that you're looking for? So one of the things that you can do, and I've done, is to actually, one of the things I've done in the past was actually, there was like an Australian candy bar that I wanted to replicate the flavor of. So I actually bought boxes of it that I, took through the airport and came to the US, and we basically like blended them up with like crushed ice and water, so that the scientists could like taste it and understand that's what we're going for. That's the flavor that we're looking for. And then once they understand that, then they're pretty smart, and it's a matter of masking the original flavor of the product and then adding flavor and trying to get to as close as possible, to that like flavor that we're going for.
Gotcha.
And well, as you can probably imagine, I don't know if you've tried the tightener in a unicorn thick shake, which has just come out yet. So that was probably the most complex one ever to flavor.
Now, I was saving that one. Sandy and I are going to do a live YouTube stream, I think, here tomorrow. She's got meetings after school on Tuesday for her dean duties at the school. So we were going to do a YouTube live stream and answer some user questions while we're doing a live tasting of the unicorn shake, because that's such a novel flavor that we haven't really seen here much. And I personally haven't tried any unicorn flavored products in general, but I know Bang has released a unicorn energy drink, so I might save that for Justin's podcast that I do with him on Thursdays, and so we'll make it a week theme of unicorn flavored products here on the show.
So is it true, because when Stack came out with their like review of the Titan Thick Shake series, it was mentioned that the two of you are like big fans of unicorn. I wasn't sure if that was like sarcastic or serious.
It was just it was a tongue-in-cheek thing that we made a mention on one of our podcasts. I made a flippant remark about I made this whole thing about we had a fake sponsor, and it was a keto CBD BHB infused energy drink called Cool Burn because we were making fun of how everybody's jumping on the keto and CBD bandwagons, and then just to throw it in, I made up something ridiculous called unicorn milk or something like that for the the flavor.
Well, so maybe I won't tell you then, but one thing I will, maybe you guys can guess, but the unicorn thick shake in the Titan series is actually a combination of 3 different flavors combined together.
Okay,
and
I'll keep that in mind when we do it.
You should experience like an initial taste, like a middle taste, and an aftertaste. And now you can't come to any of our social media sites and cheat and get the results, but we ran like in the market, so or on our social media pages, like a competition when it was released to like guess the flavor combination, and we had 3,000 guesses, and not one person got all 3 correct. So then we had a huge job of like deciphering the 10 closest guesses of the 3,000. So we'll see if the supplement engineer and the supplement snoop, if you guys, no cheating, if you guys can actually figure out or live what the flavor is, and we'll let you know.
We will do our best and let you know what we come up with.
But also just let you know for everyone also too, if you're not into unicorn, there's also like chocolate, vanilla, and banana in the thick shake range, so we have like something for everyone.
Yeah. So why the choice to combine whey protein concentrate and milk protein isolate?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I would say that milk protein isolate is really misunderstood in the industry, and I think the same thing happens in the US market, and the Australian market, and the New Zealand market. Is people look at milk protein isolate MPI as an ingredient, and I think you guys even asked this question on a podcast, and I think Snoop actually really likes it, but was saying why people are just obsessed with WPI only, and my answer to that is really simple. I think people just like pick up the product and they go milk.
Yeah.
Why are we like paying all this money for a milk?
Mm-hmm.
So to take a bit of like a deeper dive into that, milk protein isolate MPI and whey protein isolate go through exactly the same manufacturing process. So both of them go through like a really advanced filtration process to break it down. Mm-hmm. So you're actually getting a product that's sort of as fast acting as each other. There's really no variation there.
Right.
The only difference is that a whey protein isolate starts with whey as the base ingredient. Milk protein isolate starts with milk. So with a whey protein isolate, you end up getting whey isolate fractions. With the milk protein isolate, the end result is about 80% whey isolate fractions, but you're also getting 20% casein isolate fractions. And so you're actually getting a product that's going to give better results overall for a blended product. A lot of people will still like a WPI straight after training, but if people are looking for a blend, it's a great combination. We have the MPI, which gives the isolate fractions and the casein fractions. Plus, it also contains some WPC. And the key thing about WPC is because it hasn't gone through that filtration process, it's intact. So it still has your immunoglobulins, your growth factors, your lactoferrins. Mm-hmm. All the studies on like those whey protein benefits are all still based on like a WPC. Right. Like most whey isolates have 0 of that left in them. So you're getting the best of both worlds. But, you wouldn't want to take just a whey protein concentrate on its own with like nothing else, because it's just hard to absorb in your digestive system. So we've tried to create like a product in the Titan Arena range that not only like tastes great, but is also very advanced. So we look at all aspects, and they're also like soy free, they're like gluten free, they're all batch tested. They're all high protein, low sugar. So sometimes with the Titan Arena brand, people think because it tastes so great, they're not getting something that's going to be as good. But we've tried to give them, both so they can have their cake and eat it too, literally.
Is there much of a price discrepancy from the brand's point of view? And you don't have to get into specific prices or, what y'all pay per kilo of protein or anything like that, but just in general. Is whey protein isolate considerably cheaper than milk protein isolate? Is that maybe driving why people sell more whey proteins in general than milk protein powders?
No, so whey protein concentrate is cheaper, whey protein isolate is more expensive. Milk protein isolate is about the same. So you're going to pay more as for a milk protein isolate or a whey protein isolate than you are for a concentrate.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think that's driving it. I think it's really just an understanding in like the general marketplace, probably driven by the consumer and probably like a lack of education of like what a milk protein isolate is. And it's more than just milk powder that they're getting from the supermarket, like thrown in and marked up incredibly. I think that's the perception. I think people think they're getting, if you have it in like the bottom shelf of the supermarket.
Yeah, the dry milk powder.
Yeah. That's what people think they're getting. So I think that's and that's why it's great that you have this like podcast so we can like get into that.
Mm-hmm. How do you, as a brand owner, differentiate yourself or try to differentiate your brands from an ever-increasing competition in the market? Because it's easier than ever for people to jump into the market or start up a company, or you go to a contract manufacturer, you give them $5,000 and you've got your own products. How do you, as somebody that's been in the supplement game for quite a while, continue to stay on the forefront of being present in the minds of new consumers that are coming to the market?
So it's, as you said, it's like a really easy market to enter, but it's a very hard market to be successful in. So that's a challenge. So you'll see lots of people entering the market, and there is so many brands that are available out there these days.
Yep.
So my thoughts on it have always been, is that I think to make great products in this industry, I still do believe, and I always have, that ultimately the science, comes first. And, people are looking for products that are going to give them the best result possible for what they're looking for themselves. So, and to do that, one of the things, fortunately, that I love doing is I love the research side. I love, looking into, the latest, scientific research that's come out. But at the same time, with all of that, you have to look at it with skepticism, because of a lot of these clinical trials, you have to like read between the lines, and a lot of like trials often can be like engineered to give people the result that they want.
Correct.
So I think it's a combination of doing the research, but also being skeptical at the same time when you do that research, and just having had, I guess, experience in the industry, that you can look at a study that's come out, but read it from start to finish, and sort of like try and look at what are they trying to achieve with the study, and put that into effect. So, but I think ultimately, I think people who are buying these products, they are, at the end of the day, they want to get the best value that they can for like the money they're spending. So, if we can give people like the best experience, that's going to create the success. I mean, like you said, anyone can like throw caffeine, into like a pre-workout or like a fat burner and put it onto the market, but we want to try and give people, like, if people use one of our products and they get the best workout they've ever had in their life, or they've actually used one of our fat burners like Xenovar or L-Tartrate and they actually lose body fat, they'll come back and buy it again. See, one of the funniest things that happens in this industry is there are so many fat burners on the market, and one of the things that I often joke about is that fat burners are really often a pre-workout in disguise.
Yeah,
and
I would agree.
I made a prediction a few years ago, and I said, I guarantee you it will not be long until a brand comes out with a pre-workout fat burner. And I used to say that in seminars as a joke. And then, surprise, surprise, it happened. And so I say to people, well, hang on for a second. What do you want from a pre-workout? You want to have the training session of your life 4 days a week. That's what you want. What do you want with like a fat burner? And everyone like looks blank, and looks blankly at me. And I was like, well, you want to lose fat. So, if you, and so, there's people who like, a lot of people who are listening to your podcast who like work in supplement stores or retail stores, and they probably have people like coming back who keep on buying the same fat burner that they see, someone on Instagram using, but, they're actually getting fatter every time they come back in, because what they're taking is a pre-workout in disguise. So if you were to take a pre-workout like 2 or 3 times a day, 7 days a week, what you're actually going to do is raise your cortisol levels, blow out your adrenals, And ironically, what that does is it actually increases body fat, men in the stomach, women in the hips and butt. Mm-hmm. So a lot of fat burners out there are doing the opposite of what they're intended to. So, that's why the Zenivara and the L-Tartrate are so popular, just because people actually get results from it.
Yeah. I would think another thing is that people are expecting magic to come from a supplement, and they're not focusing as much on their diet, because as great as anybody could formulate any fat burner, if they're not doing something to instill some kind of calorie deficit, it doesn't matter what fat burner they're going to take. They're not going to lose weight anyways, and they're going to try to blame the fat burner for not working. But at the same time, are you really training as hard as you can? Are you burning as many calories as you should? Are you keeping your diet in line? I mean, the fat burner can only do so much as a supplement. It's not drugs. It's a supplement. It's there to supplement your diet and exercise program. I think that is what's missed a lot in the fat burner or the marketing of fat burners, just in general across the industry.
So, and that's so true. And I always talk about the three pillars being nutrition, training, and also your supplementation. That reminds me, this is maybe a bit more of sports supplement history for you. The product that I think was just the greatest marketing concept of all time, but crazy, was years ago a US company came out with a pill and they called it weight loss in a bottle. This was some years ago, and it actually eventually got taken off the shelf. But you remember, years ago, coming back from an overseas conference and showing my parents, my mom was like, "I want that." So I think that would be the dream. Would be to have that exactly that exercise in a bottle.
Yep, exercise in a pill would be the holy grail of supplements if that was possible. You've mentioned a few times about seminars that you presented at. What exactly goes on at the seminars? What are you presenting on? And give us a little glimpse into that.
Yeah, so when I do seminars, they're actually quite unique. I think when people do seminars, normally someone stands at the front on a lectern and they just talk at people.
Right.
When I sort of introduce myself, I make it really clear to everyone at the seminar that if you disagree with what I'm saying, I want you to interrupt me mid-sentence and say, "I object." I disagree. I challenge what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So when I do a seminar, it's very, very different. They're interactive. I love people interrupting me mid-sentence. It doesn't bother me. I say sometimes I end up on sleep or test or, a lot of different areas that people are really interested in. Mm-hmm. They don't often get into. But, I tell people, listen, I don't mind criticism. I think it's fantastic. And, if people disagree, I don't mind a difference of opinion. Mm-hmm. And, and one of the reasons for that, though, also, too, is that science changes so much. I mean, when I do these seminars, sometimes there's PhD graduates in there, and sometimes there's people who don't know what a carbohydrate is. Mm-hmm. So you can literally have all levels. And I remember recently I did a seminar, and someone, they put up a hand and said, I completely disagree. We're actually talking about the metabolic window. And I said, okay, tell me a bit about yourself and your background. And, she said, well, I graduated, I did my PhD in nutrition. I was like, when did you graduate? And she said, 3 years ago. And I said, you know what? I said, I was giving the seminar 3 years ago. I would be saying exactly what you said just now and swearing it was true. Yeah. But, you have to be open-minded because, science changes. And I think a lot of people get caught up in what was the case as opposed to what is it now. And, and I say during these seminars, look, I could be saying something right now that is backed up by the latest scientific research, but 5 years from now, it may be proven to be completely wrong, or maybe not completely wrong, but it may turn out that a better option is available. So you have to be open-minded to that change. And I think that's where the supplement industry gets stuck. People get stuck on things. And, for example, in the Titan and Victory Lab ranges, we originally had branch chain formulas. Mm-hmm. And, if I got stuck, they would still be branch chain formulas. So we're actually redesigning them currently into essential amino acid formulas. And that's where I think, you need to be open-minded and flexible and say, hey, we were wrong or we weren't completely right, just like everyone else. 3 years ago, I thought branch chains were the best you could get. But, science has come out and shown otherwise. So, we're not we don't consider ourselves too perfect to say, okay, we can do this in a better way.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think
that's how it evolves.
I think part of the issue may stem from the fact that whenever a new study comes out, and I would blame the media as much in this as anybody, is that when a new study comes out, everybody immediately jumps on and says, yep, this is the way that it's got to do it, and they completely disregard, the previous 40, 50, 60 years of research that's been done on a topic. So if a new supplement study comes out, this ingredient proves that everything else is crap. It doesn't work. And that's not the way that we need to look at scientific evidence. It's not proof of anything. It is a contribution to an existing body of knowledge that's continuing to expand as we further our understanding of how the body works and how chemicals that we ingest interact with our physiology. I think everything is a contribution. It's not a definitive one way or the other.
And, there's a famous saying that, I love repeating. I don't claim to have made this up, and that is that science moves forward with tombstones. And that is still the case today. I think if you've won like a Nobel Prize or been published for your scientific research, you are not going to want to see someone come up with something 10 years on that sort of like changes that. So that's how science works. And, I think the supplement industry, is based on science, and, you'll see some of that take place also.
Correct. Excellent. So let's, what does your personal daily supplement regimen look like?
So, I did, first of all, the one thing that I think is like really important is change. And, because, people ask me this question, and I was like, okay, well, before I answer that question, I'll say, what is the best workout that you can be doing? And my answer to that is whatever you are not doing right now. Because if you want to get results, and that's increasing muscle or losing body fat, you've got to shock your body with change. If you just keep doing the same thing, it will not work. And that goes for your workout, and that goes for your, your supplementation. So, but, personally myself, like, I love all industries of like sports nutrition and natural health. So, I mean, first of all, one of the things is, definitely, I love, taking like, protein. So, definitely I'm enjoying the Titan Shake series as much as yourself. I still also have a private stash at home of the previous Victoria Labs protein that we're sort of refreshing at the moment. So, I probably have like the last batch of that. So I'll do that. Pre-workouts I'll change, and it depends on what I'm doing. So, we've got, in the Victoria Labs brand, a really high strength one Doom and a mid strength one Titan. So I, for example, in the morning, I might take the Doom, which is like a much stronger blend with, stimulants in it. But, one of the problems with the very high stim pre-workouts is what they do, and this is one thing caffeine does, but also a lot of the, the sort of like homologs to caffeine, is they decrease your body's level of adenosine. And just to explain what adenosine is when you wake up in the morning, if you've had that perfect sleep, your adenosine levels, have got to the point where you're completely refreshed. When 6 or 7 o'clock at night you finish work, that should be changing, because your body actually should be preparing to actually go to sleep in several hours' time.
Right.
So taking an incredibly high stim pre-workout is going to stop that. So if I was ever going to take one later in the day, I would switch to like a mid strength. And so that's why it's good to have those options for a couple of different things. So, I'll, definitely do that. And then, I'll definitely, change around doing different things. Definitely, creatine itself still works incredibly well. So, I like the creatine HCl form for absorption. I also think, I like, taking a really good essential amino acid blend too. So, yeah, a bit of a combination. I love to mix it around. I'm also, really big into diet. I really try and, focus on, getting as much sort of like organic food as possible into it. Also, like, and you're even looking at things like, where are you getting your water from? It's like a whole side topic. It's really important.
Yep.
And, and then, there's other things like even, getting like enough like sun, which people aren't doing, which is like just as critical as the supplements you're taking. And then I do all kinds of things. Like I actually take, some like, longevity, supplementation now, where there's some incredible research on, and like I do all kinds of biohacking things. I love like cryotherapy, like I mentioned, red light therapy, you know, compression, with normal like compression gear, and I'll change it around. So there's like a whole bunch of stuff. I love just trying anything new like that.
Any of the longevity supplements have you found particular benefit from or piqued your interest?
Yeah, I mean, look, so first of all, and we could like talk about that for a long time. We're actually working on something that will come out in that particular area, which I think is a great opportunity. I'm a huge fan of the work of actually an Australian professor, David Sinclair. He's from Australia, but he's now the head of genetics at like Harvard University, and
he's the one that did the nicotinamide riboside. They did all the NR research. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's done like a lot of fantastic research and continues to do so. So I think that's like a really sort of interesting area that's going to really grow and expand in the future.
Fantastic, man. Well, then, as that gets closer to release, we will definitely get you back on the show. So I would like to thank you for spending a considerable amount of time with us on the show today. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. You are our first Australian company to be featured on the podcast, so thank you for being on the show. This was awesome. And where can everybody find you and Victory Labs and Titan if they're interested in following the brands?
Okay. Sure. So I'll give everyone a few different pieces of information. It's what I love about today is that you can connect so easily and quickly. So first of all, like myself personally, I've like recently opened up my Instagram to be a public account, and I've made it as easy as possible. So it's just my name, Stephen Hines Insta. So Stephen with a V, Hines Hines, and then Insta Insta, and I'm just on Facebook under my name, Stephen Hines. And I actually have this weird habit where I actually love answering questions. So I actually tell people, listen, you're welcome to message me questions, and I might be incredibly busy, but then I could be like stuck on a 4-hour plane flight, which do have Wi-Fi these days, and I can answer people's questions, so that is not a problem. Then the brand, so Victory Labs is on like Instagram under at Victory Labs, and it's also on Facebook as Victory Labs. The Titan brand is on Instagram at Titan Arena Official, and on Instagram is the same in Titan Arena. And then also we've got the main Armada pages, Armada Nutrition on both Instagram and like Facebook, where everything and all the brands is included. So that's quite a lot for people to take in, but we do have like a lot of different ways of like connecting and getting information out there, and we're also very reciprocal and answering people's questions too.
Perfect. I will include links to all of that in the show notes, as well as on the Supplement Engineer website when I launch the interview officially next week. So thank you again for joining us. This was a lot of fun, man.